My next guest has made fashion history again this morning, appearing on the front cover of this month's British Vogue. It's the first time that all the magazine's cover stars have been disabled. Well, disability advocate Sinéad Burke, who counts Victoria Beckham, the Duchess of Sussex and Jamie Lee Curtis among her many supporters, joins me now. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations. Front cover of Vogue. That's brilliant, isn't it? It's important on so many levels. And when you look at that cover, how does that make... Look at that. How does that make you feel?
You know, it's extraordinary. I have been interested in fashion for as long as I can remember. Probably because as a disabled woman, and particularly as a little person, so much of what the world saw from me or made assumptions around what I could or couldn't do was based on what I looked like. And fashion was this vocabulary that gave me an opportunity to present a new narrative to the world and to individuals. But I think looking at this cover feels incredibly surreal. But I think even more, and you very kindly shared, you know, I got to be on the cover of Vogue as part of their Forces for Change issue in 2019.
Which is really good.
But the narrative and the arc from that moment to this moment is, through my company, Tilting the Lens, Edward Enninful, who's the editor-in-chief of British Vogue, invited us in to be the consultant editors for this issue.
See, that's really important, isn't it? It's not just an image. It's so much more than that.
Well, visibility is incredibly important. What we know in the world is that conversations around disability are not amplified enough, often because we don't know what words to use, we don't know what to say, but actually visibility and representation in rooms where decisions are made are even more meaningful, because that's about systemic change. That's about ensuring that something isn't just a moment or one cover or one issue, but there's actually learning. So for example, through the work at Tilting the Lens, what we did was we surveyed every single studio in the London area to ensure that the disabled models and activists and artists who would be participating would be able to be set up for success. So we asked questions such as, how many studios from entrance all the way to the set had step-free access?
Right,
Was there a quiet room for somebody who was neurodivergent, so that if they were overwhelmed by the lights, the sounds, the cameras, that they could take a deep breath?
Right.
And also thinking about people who've never been able to access the issue, not just in terms of representation and seeing themselves within it, but for the first time ever, Vogue is going to be made available in physical and digital braille. And that comes from May 5th. And that's going to be not just this issue, but every issue for the next 12 months. So how do we think about not just who's on the pages, but who's not in the room? Who can't go to their local Tesco, their local newsagents and pick up the magazine, who needs to access it digitally, and even using things like alt text, which is a piece of digital accessibility for those who are blind and low vision, in all of the social media posts and in all of the imagery. So what we've really tried to do by being in the room where decisions is made is take this holistic approach to think about not just now, but what does progress and continuous progress look like to always include as many people as possible?
Well, exactly. I mean, how important do you think it is, and how vital? Because presumably when you were growing up, there weren't many people like you on the front covers of magazines. You know, it just wasn't there. You might occasionally get someone's story, but the thing is, we have to be able to see the world through your eyes in order for it to change, don't we?
I think we know the power of empathy and we know the power of vulnerability, but there's so much ableism in society. And what I mean by ableism is a nervousness, a misunderstanding, sometimes a discrimination around disability. And to give you an example, if somebody is pregnant, they will often be asked, what's the gender of your baby? Which is an outdated question in many ways. But the person will often then say, I don't mind. I just want the baby to be
healthy. Yeah.
But what are they saying by that unintentionally?
Right.
Do they unintentionally mean, I don't want my baby to be disabled? And that is a script that as a society we've inherited. So let's just take that individual. Let's, for a moment, think about the fact that they themselves may have a child with a disability. They feel lost, they feel lonely, they feel shame. The idea of then being able to see disability represented not as a superhero, not as inspiration, but as disabled people being valid, being who they are and feeling pride and beauty as part of that, but also thinking about disabled people themselves who for too long have been trapped within a benefit system, within a cost of living system that is unaffordable, who can't access personal assistance, who can't live in accessible homes, who can't get into buildings because the entrance has steps or the accessible entrance is around by the bins. How does this move from the fashion industry, move from a magazine cover and instigate policy change, instigate better behaviours in all of us, regardless of where we sit or where we work, and really make this a common conversation that we have around our dining room tables.
Well, exactly, and everything you're saying there is so sensible. You know, it's so absolutely, everybody would go, yeah, absolutely right. But what's brilliant about it is you have done it in an industry that worships, there's no such thing, but worships perfection. That's the thing. And you've had an awful lot of support from very high-profile women, which is important. It really is, because they're the ones that people listen to.
I think one of the things that has become increasingly obvious to me is that when we talk about disability, there's often a misconception around what disability is. Disability can be both visible and invisible. It's important to acknowledge that if you have anxiety or depression or mental illness, that is also a disability, so is cancer. And it's often, we don't know what anybody is experiencing or what anybody is going through, particularly by looking at them. You very kindly mentioned at the beginning of this, people like Victoria Beckham or Jamie Lee Curtis. In conversations that I've shared with those women and with other people, they will often disclose to you quietly all that they struggle with, all that they are challenged by.
And you don't see it.
And the purpose of this issue is to think about disability and accessibility in its broadest spectrum. And that's what the joy of this is. When we think about access and accessibility, and this is so much of the work that I'm invested in. For example, how many of us now watch the television with captions?
Yeah.
I watch it all of the time.
Yeah,
sometimes because I'm watching Korean television and I don't speak Korean as of yet.
Exactly.
But sometimes because the sound is too low,
Sure.
the brightness is too high. That's accessibility for me and for everybody. Sending a text message is accessibility.
Yes.
You know, we are living in an aging society. We are all hopefully going to have the pleasure and the privilege of getting older. So by thinking about disability and accessibility, it's not for a minority population. It's for all of us now. So the work that I try to do, both as an advocate and as CEO of a company, is trying to move hearts and minds and policy changes, even simple things like, I don't know about you and how often you look at job descriptions. Don't tell anybody at ITV. But when you do, you know, often you'll go through them and it will ask a question such as, we want somebody who's a good communicator.
Right.
What does that mean? Oral? Written? Does that mean in terms of sign language? We will often say in an interview that if somebody isn't maintaining eye contact, that they're disinterested, that they're bored, maybe they're autistic.
Do you know what? That's so true. Sinead, you're fascinating. And I really want to talk to you loads more. Thank you for coming in, but this is a conversation that has to continue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you.